This is a very rare Audi RS4, one of only 135 in this beautiful sprint blue color, and it's powered by this, a dual overhead cam 4.2 liter V8 that revs to 8250. Now this car didn't always perform like this. Just a couple of weeks ago, it started up and sounded pretty bad. Oh no. After finding trouble codes and knowing that this car had been sitting around for the last 3 years, I went after old fuel, dirty intake valves, and the ignition system. The valves were cleaned up and made to look new again. An oil flush was poured in. Old crusty gaskets were replaced with crust-free gaskets, and we got rid of the oil-soaked spark plugs for some fresh ones. Now things were looking up for the Audi RS4, and it was running great until nothing. The car's been great, and I didn't suspect we were gonna have too many issues with this, especially after its initial drive home. So since the Audi has been good to us, we're gonna be, well, really good to it with some more mechanical work and of course some cosmetic work to make this thing look brand new and really bring it back. So we're going from start to finish on this one. So now is the time to grab yourself a cold beverage, or maybe a warm beverage if it's the morning, a snack or a full-blown meal, and sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh, and comment down below what you guys are eating when you watch these videos. Whenever I'm vegging out to a YouTube video, I go for the chips and hummus and I put sriracha sauce on there. It's really weird. Anyway, let's get to work. All right, so we're gonna be getting to some more work that will improve this car's performance, but first, we need to take care of some safety, which would be the brakes. These things look okay-ish right now, but when I first got it, they were heavily pitted and rotted, and they're just shot. Let's remove our BBS wheels. Give it the old palm. That sometimes doesn't work, and then you gotta give it the old mule kick. Woo, yeah, these are bad. So this is after a lot of spirited driving, and you can see that these are drilled rotors, and all the little drill holes are filled up with crud and rust. There's a lip here. Yeah, every time you hit the brakes, you can kind of hear them, and pads aren't really the best. Oh, and these rotors are like $700 a piece, but you know, two-piece, you need that. And you know what's funny with all the two-piece rotors that are out there? I never see anyone actually replacing the rotor ring and leaving the center hat. They always just replace the whole thing. So there's almost like no point. That's supposed to be one of the advantages, is that you can replace the ring separately. And then you can't even find these rings. It's crazy. Start off by pulling out the connector for the wear sensor. That is right there. And it came built right into the new pad. All right, so here's that sensor right here. There was a 10 mil holding this bracket in, so with that loose, we can get our sockets onto the big caliper bolt. And I'm using a breaker bar, a long one, because we want to work smarter, not harder. Whoever invented that phrase is just a lyrical mastermind. Smarter, not harder. It's one of my favorites. Although sometimes I feel like I'm working harder. Oh my God. All right, we hit that with the gun. Now we can get these big bolts out of the way. All right, now we can remove this big Bertha caliper. This thing is massive. Look at that. And it's in really nice shape too. I can't wait to clean this. We're gonna clean this. Something I like to do when you're working with nice Brembos that aren't all scratched up and destroyed. I mean, they're not perfect, but to keep them as perfect as possible while you're working on the rest of the brake system, just take a rag or an old LegitStreetCars t-shirt when you used to have them made on Teesprings, which makes super low quality t-shirts that end up getting destroyed like this. If you have one of those laying around, use it to wrap your caliper. For the last few years, we've been using way better t-shirts than that. Those were the early days. We also have this suspended with a bungee cord so we don't put any pressure on the brake hoses. You don't want to rip those out. But anyway, now it's protected and we can kind of do whatever we want in this area and not worry about this thing kind of banging around. It's crusty rotor time. Oh, get out of here. Goodbye. Wow, these are very light. Well, which is another, reason for the two-piece. They are lighter, I'll give them that. But this is very, very light. This isn't too rusty, but we'll hit it with the wire wheel and just clean it up. Give you a good opportunity to clean out the threads a little bit as well. Little brake clean. We'll use our old LegitStreetCars shirt to dry that up. And then just a very thin layer of anti-seize brake paste, whatever you have. And then I just work it in like this, super thin layer. That is all you need. And we'll get it around here too. Perfect. Dun, dun, dun. Ever since I bought the DeLorean, that song just comes to mind all the time during like momentous occasions like this wonderful rotor. And it just gets stuck in my head. Maybe it's stuck in your head now too? I don't know. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, stay. You're gonna stay because we're gonna put a brand new screw for $700. They give you a new screw. It's a Phillips head instead of a T30 like the original, so that's kind of weird. There you go. Okay, now we can remove our t-shirt, remove our bungee cord, and temporarily we are going to put the caliper with the old pads right over the brand new rotor. Slide it on. We're even gonna go ahead and tighten the big caliper bolts. With the caliper mounted, we're gonna use a punch and hammer to remove the pins. And this is where you wanna be really careful because some guys will wander around with the punch and then chip off the paint from the calipers, and we don't want that. So take your time here. Then you can push this clip in and slide the pins out, usually by hand if it's not too rusted up. Like that. There we go. And we'll take this out as well. And they go like this. And this not only holds the pad in, but it puts tension on it to reduce vibration. Now at this point, I'm gonna take my pliers wrapped in a nice microfiber, and I'm simply going to compress the pads, just like that. Next, we can pull the pad out. There we go. Yeah, these were about due anyway. When the thickness of the lining is less than the backing plate, which is made of steel, you're pretty much due for pads. We'll go in here and clean. We'll lubricate the sides of the pads. This is what's gonna be sliding back and forth and making contact. And then this is where the piston will lie. Little lubricant there as well. And the brake pad goes right to its home, like so. Then we'll do the exact same thing on the outside pad. Just make sure you're using a thick rag, cloth, whatever you got to compress the pad. You're not gonna ruin this at all if you do it right. There we go. Out with the old. After cleaning, in with the new. Next, we're ready for our brake pin and slide, which used to look like this, but I spent some time at the grinder wheel and spent some time on top of my jeans with a brush, and I got it to look like this, much better. I'm gonna lubricate the pin very slightly. We don't need a ton. This is basically just gonna be a light skim coat. Don't need anything on the clip. Put that right here. And then the pin slides in like so. It should be much easier now that everything is clean. Look at that. Give it a couple love taps. And you'll hear it when it bottoms out. Sounds like that. And it won't move anymore. I'll clean these calipers up in a minute, but as you can see, we haven't damaged it at all. Nice and new up top. I'll do the same to the bottom. Brakes are all done, and we're gonna use a little bit of release. This is a gentle cleaner for brakes, even though this is factory powder coated. You could probably use some harsher stuff on this, but we don't need to. They're not that bad. All right, I'm all done cleaning. Here is our final result, and I think this looks pretty darn good. Just like the leather seats in the RS4, because I use the Clyde's 4-step leather recoloring kit. I actually did this a few years ago when my friend first got the car. It was immediately parked in his lot because of the issues, and I wanted to try this out before promoting it on the channel, and it worked great. So here it is again. The seats were in the perfect condition for this kit, faded and dried out with some light cracking, and the first step is to clean the leather with their leather cleaning foam. Then you use their leather prep deglaze to remove any oils, and next is the fun part, the leather recoloring balm. This is a cream that not only dyes the leather, but also moisturizes it. After the application, you wipe off the excess and let it dry. The final step is a leather conditioning cream. This will give it some added protection, and it's a great standalone product if you just want to maintain your leather seats. So here's what the driver's side seat bolster looked like before, and here's what it looked like after. It's a total transformation, a night and day difference, and the RS4 is probably the 10th car I've used Clyde's on. It's a great product, and the dye does not rub off. You're supposed to let it dry for a few hours, but even after 5 minutes, I can't get it to transfer. This kit is super easy to use, very affordable, and the best part is, if you guys click on my link down below and use coupon code LEGIT10, that's gonna get you 10% off Clyde's products. But if you wanna save up to 40%, you use that code and get yourself one of these 4-step kits. So bundling it with the code, 40% off. It's a fantastic deal. It comes in a bunch of different colors as well if you don't have black seats, and it's easy to do. So take advantage of the deal. Check out the link, and back to the video. Oh, and something else, there is more than one way to do these brakes. You can remove the caliper with the old pads, push in the pistons like you're gonna see me do in the rear, and then install your new pads, put the pins all together and everything, and then slide it back on. You can do that, but from my dealership days, this is what we all did. It was just quicker, and you would then have the car holding the caliper for you while you do the job. Moving on to the rear, and unfortunately, they don't go with a gigantic Brembo back here. It's okay though. It's got a sweet looking rotor. I will zip through these rears. I got the bolts out for the calipers. So this guy's coming right off. This one has a parking brake attached to it. It's very light, so we can just leave it right here. There's 2 bolts in the rear, so I've taken those out. Just come right off with the pads, and these are actually in pretty good shape. Dead spider could come. Sorry, buddy. And we'll move this screw. Give it a little clean. Little lubrication. New rotor going on. Then we have a caliper piston compression tool. So we are turning the piston in right now. And that way the new brake pads will fit in because as they wear, the piston pushes out to adjust. With the rotor on, we have the brand new pads with new slide clips here. And then with the bracket bolts tightened up, we can slide the caliper on like that. And after tightening up all of the bolts, the rear brakes are done on the passenger side. We finished up the driver's side. Beautiful fronts as well. And with that, the brakes are all done. Almost. I want to bleed the brakes because you should swap out your brake fluid about every 3 or 4 years. Bleeder is cracked, and we're gonna slowly but surely suck out all of the brake fluid. This is by far the easiest way to do this. You always start at the wheel furthest from the master cylinder and then work your way around. So the other rear, passenger front, and then driver front is last. But if you don't have shop air, you can do this with a friend. You can buy a Mighty Vac. There are many different ways to do this. It's actually kind of a fun thing to do with somebody else. Open, closed. Up and down and closed and opens. Something else that many people forget to ever change is the fuel filter. Now, a lot of newer cars don't have a replaceable fuel filter. It's built into the fuel sending unit, which can be a really expensive thing to replace, so people leave that. So if you're new to cars, it's not your fault if you don't know about fuel filters, but on a lot of older cars, there are replaceable fuel filters like this one. Looks like we just have some clips and a 10 mil. Another one right there. After a few more screws, this panel comes completely out. Now, even though this car was sitting for a while, it's in really good shape. The floor pans aren't rusted, the exhaust looks really nice, but some hardware is just more susceptible to moisture than others, and that is the screw for the fuel filter hold down. I honestly don't even know what that's supposed to be. I'm gonna hit it with the wire wheel, clean it up, see if we can figure out what tool we're supposed to stick in there. I don't know. All right, looks like it's a Torx, and I'm sure that'll come out really easily. We'll hit this with some penetrating oil, and you gotta get it from the backside too. That's really where the penetrating oil is going to creep in to where that screw threads into. So this is a T25, but I don't really like how it's going in. So to give yourself a fighting chance, tap it in with a hammer. So not only will this seat the socket, but it could rattle loose some of the rust in there. Now this goes in nicely. Let's see what happens. Oh, we got it. Woo! Excellent. Take your time with this stuff, people. It's not worth breaking it. So this is what the screw head looked like before. Here is what the threads looked like. But after a little bit of wire wheel magic, getting off all of the rust, and after hitting it with some satin black rust reformer paint, you have a fully restored fuel filter screw that any screw aficionado worth his weight could appreciate. And yes, you just watched the restoration of a fuel filter screw on an Audi, and I can almost guarantee you did not wake up today, this morning, thinking you would have seen this on YouTube, or did you? So this doesn't happen again. We're gonna put a little penetrating oil in here, and this does screw into plastic, which makes it even more difficult sometimes not to mess up because you can destroy the threads in the plastic. But that's good. Let's get this out. I wonder if it's original. Now it is nice that these have the quick disconnect instead of the hose with the clamps, but the downside is we can't just clamp off these hoses so we don't lose fuel. So you just squeeze these together and then you can pull it off. So I'm gonna get them all ready, just about right there. And then we're gonna do the quickest fuel filter switcheroo you've ever seen. All right, the lines are loose. Hannibal Lecter mask is going on. I don't know why I call it that, but I do. And now we gotta be quick. So this fuel filter is gonna sit like that. Okay, here we go, guys. Let's see how fast I can switch this out. And yeah, there we go. Timer starting now. Please don't lose a lot of fuel. 1. Ah, I can't get that one. Get out of my way. Okay. We lost a little fuel. It's okay. It cleans the floor really well. Bam. There we go. Whew. All right. I don't know how long that took. My screw is still drying, or I would zip that in. I want the screw to be absolutely perfect. But there you go. Don't pay anyone to do your Audi RS4 fuel filter. It's probably the same on the S4 as well. They most likely charge an hour of labor, which nowadays could be over $200 at the dealer. You could do this. You could do this. And you can clean your floor with the gasoline at the same time. Goodbye, UFI filter? UFO? Ooh, that is not the prettiest fuel in the world. Is there a day code? Oh, 2006? Wait a minute. Yeah, this is a 2006 date code. So these came with these made in China filters from the factory. Audi? So this is what my floor looks like when I'm doing brakes versus when I do a fuel filter. With our fuel filter clicked in, it's time for our favorite screw of all time, going back to its home. And we'll start this thing by hand because it is plastic. And we'll fully tighten it by hand as well. There we go. Little plastic torque click. Clicky, click, click, click. And here you have it. That is how you replace an Audi RS4 fuel filter in just a few seconds once the lines are taken loose and the panel is gone. And that's how you restore a screw, which took longer than the entire job. And oh man, I scraped away some of the paint. Darn, I gotta do the whole thing over again. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna leave it just like that. Or am I? You'll never know if I took that screw back out to restore it. Seeing as how the fuel filter was original, I'm gonna go ahead and assume the fluid in the differential is as well. And this differential is bone dry, which is nice. So there's the fill on the side. Here's the drain on the bottom. Take the fill out first, not only to allow it to drain easier, but also in case it's stuck in the case, that you haven't drained it out and then you're dead in the water and you can't move the vehicle until you fix it. Let's see if this comes out. Oh yeah. Nice and easy. All right, the drain broke loose very easily. Let's take a look at this fluid. Has it been changed? Has it not been changed? We're gonna find out. I'm gonna say it's been changed. That doesn't look too bad at all. Yeah, look at that, nice and clean, beautiful. But these differentials don't hold all that much fluid, so it's nice to change them every once in a while, especially if you have a limited slip. Now, don't quote me on this, but I think the RS4 had an optional limited slip differential, but a ton of Euro cars from this era, even all-wheel drive ones, have open differentials, and they use the braking system and traction control system to kind of mimic an LSD by applying the brakes to each side and stuff like that. But either way, if you're unsure, a lot of the good synthetic fluids come with the limited slip differential additive. And in this case, the factory calls for 75W90. So if the car had an LSD, we're good. And if the car had an open diff, we're still good. The additive isn't bad for an open differential car. All right, so here is our pumping setup. You can pick these up for about 15 bucks. So one tube goes in the bottle and this end will go right in here. And then you simply pump. And we are pumping the fluid right in. Oh, you hear that? We're done with the first one. And you're gonna do that right until there. See it dripping out? You're done. Now you can pull the hose out and reinstall the fill plug. There we go. Don't forget to tighten it up, like so. After a nice little wipe down, congratulations. You have serviced your own differential for just the cost of fluid. And again, there are shops that charge about an hour of labor to do this, so you would have saved yourself a couple $100. In the front, it's basically the same. You have the drain on the bottom and the fill on the side, but there is a big difference here. This is a manual transmission, and the differential and the transmission are all one unit. So there's just one fluid. And let's take a look at it. Yeah, looks pretty good. And you can see it plopping out like that and making a big splashy mess because I didn't remove the fill. That's why you want to do that, so air can get sucked in. But let me show you something that is super important. All right, so no matter what kind of gear oil or transmission fluid you are using, find a good synthetic. That's a start right there, especially with a car like this. But take a look. 75W90, it says gear lube. 75W90, it also says gear lube. But if we flip these around, this says GL5 and this says GL4. And this is why it's important to get good information. So it's showing the GL5 for the rear differential and the GL4 for the manual transmission. Now, even though these are the same weight, the main difference would be the EP additives, so the extreme pressure additives. The GL5 that's meant for differential is gonna have about twice the amount of these EP additives as the GL4, which that's awesome for a differential, but inside of a manual transmission, you have synchros, and if you have too much of the EP additives in there, you could have an issue with the synchros meshing together, so you might grind some gears and possibly damage the transmission. Now, I have seen people run the GL5 in the manual transmissions without any issues, but why risk it? Now you know the GL4 is for the manual, GL5 is for the differential. Just like the rear, once it starts dripping out, you can put your fill plug back in. All right, so we've serviced the front differential slash transmission, the rear differential, new fuel filter with fully restored screw, our beautiful brakes all the way around with new fluid. And so we only have one thing left to do here at this shop: clean the MAF. Although with my horrible doctor style handwriting, you probably didn't know what that spelled. I'm really bad. Here is our mass airflow sensor, so we'll pull the connector off. A couple of torque screws, and this will pull right out. like that. And here are some of the inner workings of the mass airflow sensor. There is more to it inside that is sealed, but the way this works is there are two sensing wires. One is heated and one is not. Electrical current is ran through the heated side, and when air rushes past the mass airflow sensor, it cools it off. Because one of the sensing wires is not heated, the ECU can compare the temperature reading and change voltage across the heated side to compensate, and it's able to calculate the difference and translate it into an amount of air that is rushing past the sensor. So the more you open the throttle blade, the more air is going to rush past that sensor, so it's going to see that increase in the amount of air, and it's going to adjust your fueling accordingly. More air, more fuel, more power. Over time, these little sensing wires can get dirty, so you can find products like this, mass airflow sensor cleaner. No, do not use brake clean. Just get something that says mass airflow sensor cleaner. This might be exactly what electrical contact cleaner is. I'm not 100% sure, but I just get the right stuff. And it's very easy. You just spray as much as you can. Definitely get those wires. Spray the whole thing out inside as well. Now we're just gonna let that dry completely and reinstall it, and you're done. This is not a factory recommended maintenance procedure. This is just something that I add on to my LegitStreetCars care package, if you will. And we already did a new air filter in the last video and an oil change, and we replaced the coolant. So with this and everything else you've seen, this car is fully maintained. Oh, and we can't forget that I've cleaned these nasty intake valves and replaced all the spark plugs as well. With this guy all dried up, we can simply slide it right back in, like so. Tighten up our screws. And yes, this is going to a plastic housing, so be careful if you're doing what I'm doing. Snug them up, plug it in. You're done. You just cleaned your mass airflow sensor. Now it can sense all the mass of air that it wants. And lots of air makes it into this thing. It's got a gigantic throttle body. Before we get these wheels put back on, some of you in the last video were wondering if these were real or replica BBS wheels. I do believe they are real. Made in Germany right there, and they have what look to be the right part numbers too. And none of them are bent. The tires look really great. I think they were replaced right before this thing sat around, but these wheels do need a little bit of repair work. So we're gonna put them on right now so we can drive this thing over to the body shop and do our complete cosmetic restoration. So no more stuff like this and like this, and this sensor is straight up gone. She gone. And a few other things to make this Sprint Blue Audi RS4 look even better. All right, the wheels are back on, and I was about to reinstall the under engine panel, but because the valve covers were leaking, it got pretty dirty. We can't put this back on. Let's blast it clean. It's already been soaking with a little bit of degreaser, so it shouldn't be too bad. Goodbye, dirt. See ya. So pretty. Under engine panel is all dried up, and although no one will ever see this, you and I know that it's clean. The under engine panel is back on. Let's roll. Fire in the Audi hole. Come on, baby. Aha. All right. That was the old fuel filter. This thing revs so quick. Runs great. This thing is awesome. We're gonna make it even awesomer. Awesomist? Awesomistic? Is awesomistic a word? I think it is now. We got a full tank of gas, no warning lights. This thing runs absolutely perfect. Oh, and something else that you guys mentioned in the last video is you thought I didn't plug in a vacuum line under the intake, and I appreciate you mentioning that. I did plug it in, I just forgot to show it. Well, without that plugged in, the variable runners would not have worked, and we would have had a check engine light on and all that kind of good stuff. So I've said this many times before, but I have the best subscribers. You guys are actually watching every little piece that I'm doing, and so many of you are like, Alex, I hope you didn't forget the vacuum line. And I mean, I have forgotten stuff like that before. I mean, it happens when you work on cars every single day, but thank you guys. All right, we are back at O'Hare Auto Body in Bensonville, Illinois. They're gonna be doing all of the paint and body work, and look at that, the rotor's cleaned up. And if you guys are wondering if I take the paint that comes on these so they don't rust off, I don't. I just let the brake pad clean it off. You can use brake clean to get it off, but I learned this at Mercedes because I used to spray them all down and get the paint off. You don't have to do that. You just let the pad clean it off. It's totally meant for that. But anyway, this had different tires on it at some point, and they were rubbing, and and you can see it's rusted. So that is getting fixed along with a bunch of other paint magic. So let's get right into it. Now the first step was fixing the curb rashed BBS wheels. So I sent them over to eMotion Wheel Repair and Powder Coating in Rolling Meadows, Illinois, and they stripped them down before coating. All right guys, this is my first time seeing it with the new wheels, or the freshened up wheels. Woo! Oh man, this is absolutely perfect. Right now, they're gonna start on the body work, including that rust repair. They're gonna go ahead and take off this rear bumper. It's got a little nick here. This thing fell inside the parking sensor. Oh, and right here. Yeah, this has got to get fixed. Just a little bit of a scuff and dents. So anyway, with that, let's get to some body work, and look at that. It's got a blue brother over there. All right, so the beautiful wheels are off, and right now they're taking out the inner quarter liner because we're gonna be getting to this rust right away. Well, that was quick. Goodbye, rust. That's awesome.
It was not that rust, it was just on the
surface. Yeah.
We got some on the inside too.
Now he's switching it up with this wire wheel. And it's just giving it kind of a final clean, make sure all the surface rust is gone. So now he's sanding down the entire area, making it very, very smooth. Look at that. Very nice. Underneath the paint here, does this look factory to you?
Yeah, it looks factory primer.
So you can kind of see the layers here. Right there is the clear, then you have your base and then your primer, and then right down to metal. This looks great.
We have to do the recoating from inside.
Okay, so what he's talking about is the caulking that's in here, and they have that on seams. You can kind of see some right there. So they're gonna redo that on the inside, and this is almost ready for primer. Next up, the rear bumper is gonna come off, and we still have to do this side as well. So he's gonna sand this down just the same way. This is really cool, guys. There is only one screw right here, and it's behind this little cover to take out the rear tail light. Check this out. Now it pops out. So it has two little tabs there. That's it, Audi, great job. Timing chains up against the firewall, could have done a better job with that, but they got the taillight design down. Okay, so we thought we were getting lucky there with not having to take any of this stuff apart, but to remove the rear bumper, we gotta take this stuff apart anyway, but okay. I love taking things off though, because then you can see the real structure of the car behind here. Because if this thing was hit in the back and they just pulled it out, you would be able to tell. And this looks totally factory. This is a clean Carfax car, no accidents or anything like that. So this is beautiful. There we go. All right, that's going. It's kind of funny to see where they stop the clear. So under here is still cleared, less clear, less clear, less clear, and no clear whatsoever. There's no point on the inside, and they have to save money somewhere. So there are two nuts right here, and that's holding the bumper in on the inside. I just got the screw out right here, so now the bumper can start coming back. More of the inner structure here of the Audi. Looking good. This is kind of cool. It's a shield over the filler neck for the fuel. All right, passenger side coming out. There we go. All right, we found two more screws, so there's a total of 10 that hold this bumper on, plus the clips. What are the newer cars like though?
It's just the clips, and on the sides, like 2 screws, one each side, and maybe 2 screws on the bottom, and that's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
So this is better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one, the old one is better.
Last of the good Audis right here, people. All right, I'll get this here. All right, so now we just have the harness.
Yeah.
There's our sensor
from the inside, yeah.
And here is the sensor that popped in. So unfortunately, even if we didn't need to do some scuff and dent repair on the bumper, we'd have to take it off just to get to this. And I'm sure there's a clip issue, and that's why it fell out. All right, so we have the bumper here, and we can see that there were air lines being ran for an active exhaust, but they blocked it off, it looks like. And this does have the Miltech Sport exhaust system, but I wonder if that was an old system that had the valves to open and close the muffler, because I don't see anything on this. Yeah, I don't think this has it, so they must have been running a different system. Unless the Audi from the factory has the active exhaust with the valves, I'm not exactly sure, but either way, this sounds amazing. I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, double-sided tape too. So this is screwed on and taped on. Okay. There we go. Sometimes the threads are actually in the trunk lid, and then you have to drill those out and put nutserts in and everything. This way, if this was bad, you could just replace it. All right, so we're gonna pop off these little lights first, and Audi really hooked us up here. One screw. you go. And now this guy pops right out. Easy peasy. So now the trunk is gonna get stripped. So we're gonna remove all of the decals. I gotta say, I've been doing this wrong my whole life. This takes that double-sided tape off like immediately. This is awesome. So does this damage the paint?
No, it's not damaged.
Wow. I gotta say, I've seen these wheels for sale for this purpose, but I just assumed they were for body shops where they're gonna repaint the area anyway. I mean, we are in this case, but yeah, you could just totally, look at that, it's fine.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right, guys, I'm gonna find that on the internet. I'll link it down below. That is awesome. What is this thing? Astro, oh, it's just rubber?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's literally rubber.
On the low speed.
Only on low speed, okay. You learn something new every day. I am buying one of those. Oh, here we go, look at that. It's just munching it away. Woo. All right, so we're gonna remove parts of the ground effects here. This is double-sided tape. There was a screw on the inside. Another screw hiding on us, and one right there. There we go. Sometimes you gotta put a little pressure on it. There we go. There's about 6 screws for this little thing right here. That's crazy. And the reason they removed this is because they're gonna be respraying the entire quarter. We still have that rust to grind down, but this whole quarter is getting sprayed, and you don't want a seam right here or a gap because your clear coat and your base coat could kind of drip inside. So it's better to just take that panel completely off. Next, we're popping this inner liner out so we can get to this dent. All right, coming out. See if we can see it. So right in this area. That's a tough spot because there's some more inner bracing. Oh yeah, it's like right in here. Yeah, it's tough to get at. This is a PDR dent removal tool. So Lucas is gonna use that to try to attack this thing from the inside. So he's pushing up on it right now. That's hard to see, but the metal is moving up a little bit. All right, it's grinding time. This will kind of show its true colors, no pun intended, because we're removing the color. But you can see where the blue still is. That's a divot in. All these scratches are too deep to buff out. They're going bye-bye. Yeah, a little bit of a low spot there. Looking good. I think we should just clear this. We'll just take all the paint off, clear right over. You basically have a DeLorean at that point, a DeLorean RS4. So that's obviously a pretty aggressive pad, and now we're coming in with a finer sanding disc to level out the surrounding area. Right now he's tapping down the high spots. I kind of want to get like a woodpecker bird in here and just hold it and be like, go to work, bird. All right, so we're gonna do a little bit of a skim coat with a fiberglass filler. Why did you say that's important, stronger?
It's much stronger and holding better to bare metal than the regular filler. And
this is just gonna be a really light skim coat because you got this pretty smooth. Obviously there's a little bit of an indent there. It's actually kind of a cool color. Like I wouldn't mind having a car painted that. It's sweet. That's very 90s. Looking good, looking good. And this is gonna get heavily sanded, so there will be probably 90% less filler than what you see right here after they sand it down. This is just to fill in, little low spots. And guys, if you haven't seen a lot of paint and body work, even, $100,000 builds are gonna have skim coats of this kind of stuff on the car to make it perfectly smooth. Even from the factory, sometimes they use a little bit of filler, and that's why some of these newer cars look so good. All right, now we're gonna let this dry for a bit, and they aren't gonna remove the entire trunk because they just need to paint this section here, and there's a great break point here. And also, just something minor to think about, but I don't know about you, but it's important to me. But, none of this has ever been touched. So you can see all of these bolts still have the clear coat, and they're perfect. Once you start removing stuff, or if you were gonna take it off from here as well, same deal. It's just, you can tell. And then the alignment isn't spot on factory. So it's just not worth it, honestly. And these guys are so good at paint matching. Look at the color of the fender and the hood on my old Tesla. They look exactly the same, and that's because they match the paint perfectly. The hood was completely repainted by O'Hare, and the fender was untouched because it had no damage. So if you have a really good painter, it can save you a lot of time and money with body work because you don't have to remove this, you don't have to sand the whole thing down. He's gonna be able to just paint that lower section, and then that's gonna blend into the quarter panels, and they're gonna be repainting the bumper, so this thing is gonna look sweet. So right now we have Lupe the painter just taking a look at everything just to put his input in on exactly what gets taken apart. Lupe's painted some cars for me. He's amazing. We have the Olympic rings of the Audi coming off. All right, there we go. So we'll remove this tape as well, but they will be clear coating the entire trunk. So this isn't gonna get new color. It's in really great shape, but they'll scuff this out, buff it and everything. And then the whole thing will be clear coated after this is painted. And that's how they blend into a panel that's not being painted. So usually when you hear that they're blending into the adjacent panel, it's just clear. All right, we're bouncing around a little bit since that is drying. It's time to hit up this quarter. And this one's not nearly as bad as the other one, just a little bit of surface rust. And what it looks like is they had some much wider tires on there before, and these were replaced right before this car sat. And you can tell they went with a narrower tire, so it'll fit inside, you know, that gap. I'm not a huge fan of the stretch, but I mean, this isn't horrible. Keep going. Guys, I highly recommend you get your wheel and tire fitment spot on before you go drive your car. This is a very, very expensive repair for something that definitely could have been avoided. So the fiberglass is dry already. It only took about an hour and a half. So now he's sanding it down.
Yeah, I use 80 grit for the fiberglass. It's more hard to sand it. And for the body filler, I'm gonna use 120 and finishing 180.
And Luis, how long have you been doing body work for?
Over 20 years, like 25 years.
Wow. You know, I like to highlight the tradesmen that are actually doing the work. And some of the guys here at O'Hare have like 20, 30 years experience. I think Lupe's past 30 years of being a painter. So really cool to see these guys in action and also to hear their stories. Luis, did you learn all your body shop work here or where'd you learn? Poland?
Poland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started actually, I have 16 years old. I was learning to do the body work and the paint.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was painter for 20 years too.
Wow. Fun Chicago/Polish fact is we have more Polish people in the city of Chicago than any other US city. Shout out to all the Polish people out there. Comment down below. Are you Polish? I'm a little bit of everything. I'm like Irish, German, mostly Italian, obviously. I probably have some Polish somewhere in there. It just depends when you do these DNA tests. I've done a few and they change. So I don't know how accurate they are. Sometimes I think they're just throwing a dart and just sending you something in the mail. But like a few years ago, I was less Irish and now I'm a little bit more Irish. I'm like 11%. So I keep on getting more Irish as the years go on. I don't know. So now we're doing the final top coat. So this is a very fine body filler and it has a much thinner consistency, as you can tell. It's got a very, very strong smell and I love it. I love the smell of body filler. Is anyone with me? It's just, it's very chemical-y. It's probably not good for you, but it smells great.
Yeah, you're right.
You like the smell too, right? It's good. Although you're probably immune to it at this point. But all right, so we have the rear bumper stripped, so all the parking sensors are gone. And we just have little areas like this to sand down. This is probably the worst.
Little hole, it already was like a little bundle before. Yeah, I have to use the different grades of paper to sand it more deep.
Okay, so right now he's using a coarser sandpaper. There we go, this thing is going away. Sweet.
You can see the bundle here.
Oh yeah.
The primer, one layer of paint, the primer, and the second layer
Wow.
of the paint. There was paint twice.
So they definitely fixed this before.
They fixed it before.
This is basically ready for primer, that little spot, right?
Actually, we have to sand it the fine paper a little bit more.
Okay.
Fine paper, sand it more, and the primer.
And it's like cutting open a tree with all the different layers. So a little bit more sanding in that area, and then the entire bumper is basically getting sanded down. There are a few of these, and we want it to look perfect. All right, guys, after all of the disassembly, the RS4 is in the paint booth, all masked off and prepped, almost. We still have a little bit of prep work to do. Here is the bumper, so everything has been sanded down. Some primer has been laid down, but we have to put an acid on the car right now. Hang on.
My brother was one of the best painters back then.
Your brother was?
My brother was one of the best painters, and he's the one that trained me. He's the one that got me into this, and I believe I got pretty good at it. I'm still doing it. I want to keep doing it until I cannot do it no more.
All right, Lupe, ladies and gentlemen, he's painted some of my other cars. He's got over 40 years of painting experience, and his color match is awesome. So let's check out his setup before we go back out to the RS4.
The bottom of this is all our primers. With this primer, you can mix any color, make any color. Same thing for the sealer, for your vehicle, for the Audi. We're gonna mix blue sealer. We'll spray the sealer, we'll go ahead and spray our color, and when it is time for clear coat, All we gotta do is just double check that there's no door nib, that there's nothing wrong with our color, and we'll take it from there.
He entered everything into the computer, so right now he is going to add in the different colors. So this is gonna be blue, and it's measuring the weight right now. Let's see there. Next it'll tell him how much white needs to go in. And this is just a little bit, not much. That's it, a couple little drops there. Zero that out, and a little bit of black. It's like playing a game, guys, you can't go over. There we go. Okay, go a little over. So right now, this is just the primer. This isn't the actual base coat, but I've never seen this before. They're actually coloring the primer, which makes a lot of sense because that's gonna be underneath the base coat. So to make the color match most accurate, they can actually fine tune the primer. Pretty cool.
I mix sealer, color sealer, compared to what my color is going to be on a car. So this is the color of the sealer, and this is the color of the vehicle. I always try to make my my sealer close enough to my color.
We're shaking up the sealer right now. Hey Lupe, what's the difference between sealer and primer?
The primer is when the body guys, they got done doing bonder work, any kind of repair. That's what the primer is used for. Fill in sand scratches, tinkles, and stuff like that. The sealer, you can paint over primer if there is no breakthroughs. Some of these paint lines, it'll take a few more coats of color over primer versus sealer.
Okay, so you spend a lot more in cost of color,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Okay. I had misspoke about what he was mixing earlier. That is not the primer. The primer's already on the car. That is sealer. I always learn something new whenever I'm over here and they're painting one of the cars. I didn't know that. I thought they were interchangeable. So right now he is wiping down anything that we sanded down to bare metal. Just in case there's a little breakthrough, this is gonna protect the metal before the sealer goes on. And once this is wiped on, we have about 8 hours to work with it, or we can get to work right away, which is what we're gonna be doing. And the last spot that we had bare metal, even though it was primed, this is just in case there's any little breakthroughs, because if you just paint over that and it encapsulates any moisture, it could bubble up later. And this is an adhesion promoter that's used on plastic bumpers. So in the areas where they stopped sanding and stopped priming, you have to use this promoter in order to blend into the next area. So right now, Lupe is using a stat gun. This is an anti-static gun. It's hooked up to shop air. So even though the entire car has been wiped down with a special tack cloth, that green one right there, this takes it to a whole new level to make sure there's absolutely nothing on this surface before we paint. So little pieces of dust will show up after you paint. You might not see them now. This eliminates any of that. All right, safety first. We're about to spray the sealer, and we're gonna do everything at the same time, including the parking sensors. And here's our blue sealer going on. God, I can watch this all day. This is so cool. It already looks good with just the sealer. Look at that. Got the parking sensors.
This rattle can is called SRI. It helps on your sealer so you don't get a rough edge. That's all it does.
So obviously there's a big color difference here between the sealer and the actual color of the car, but I gotta say, I really like the color of the sealer too. This is sweet. It's got a little bit more green in it. Right now, Lupe is typing in the color code for the RS4, and it's called Sprint Blue. So it's not as easy as just typing in the color code and then mixing up whatever the computer says. Lupe will spray this out on cards and actually match it up to the car because it is a 2007, it's old, and so the color changes a little bit with the sun and with wear, and he wants to get that match spot on. If you just simply type in the code, it'll probably look different. But this is obviously a great place to start, and then he added a little bit more green to it. All right, there's our base blue. And he's dropping in some black right now. That's it, a little bit of red violet. It's always crazy to see colors that you wouldn't think would mix with the final product. Like, I would never thought there would be red in this, you know, Sprint Blue. Base coat time. Here we go. Guys, I love this stuff. It's so satisfying. It's such a cool color. So this is where you'll see the color change from the sealer to the actual base coat. Look at that. All right, so now the lights have been turned off, and Lupe is gonna use a special light to look through the paint, essentially, and make sure that he has proper coverage so far. And keep in mind, he's only done 2 coats of the color, so it's gonna get more than that, but he's just making sure there aren't any areas that need additional coats, like, well, he just found one. So yeah, you can kind of see the color difference. Yeah, so this panel here looks to be covered. There aren't any color variations. Just right in there. Okay, yeah, you can see a little bit of a difference. And it's pretty cool, you can see the green as well with this light. And also, he's heated up the room to about 100 degrees. The lights are back on, so if you see us sweating, that's why. So we've got another coat on the areas that were sanded down and primed and sealed. And now it is time for the base coat on everything else. So we'll do 2 or 3 coats of base on all of the panels at once now. And you can see right now it has kind of a matte finish to it, and that's because we haven't done clear. When it goes on wet, it looks like it's been cleared, but that flashes off. It's actually very similar to what my McLaren looks like. Everything is flashed off. It is clear coat time. He always does the edges first. Look at that beautiful blue. Wow, it is a completely different color if you have the matte reverse gloss finish. I gotta say, I'm a big fan of the gloss. I know matte can look good, but I think this is what a car should look like. Like I said, my McLaren has a very similar color, and it is a satin or matte finish. It's cool, but I just think that's cooler. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Gloss versus matte versus satin. Oh, here's like a great before and after. Well, it's going away, but yeah. Guys, this car is gonna look so sweet. Oh my gosh. Oh, the deck lid's gonna look cool. This is so much fun. If you guys have never been in a paint booth to see this up close, I highly recommend it. Although outside of filming YouTube videos, I don't really know why you would be in a paint booth if you're not a painter. God, the wide body quarters on this are so nice. And I mean, look at how much the fenders stick out too. That's all factory before the days where they would actually call the car a wide body. All right guys, so that's the first coat of clear. He's gonna wait about 10 minutes and do another one, but here she is so far. All right guys, it's the next day and we are here with the RS4 for reassembly. You might see my GTR there, sneak peek. We're doing a lot to that, but here it is. So everything has been baked in the paint booth, so we're ready to just put it together right away. And we have a bumper that's coming on, and we also have decals to put on. We gotta install this light. We got everything. Let's put this car back together and make it look like a real RS4 again. Little tiny baby light going in. This is the easiest light in the whole world after you get this panel off. All right, there's that connector. Bam. We have the rear bumper. There are a total of 16 screws and fasteners for this bumper. Audi was not messing around. So Lucas is gonna plug in a harness, and now we can slide this thing on, being very, very careful with our fresh new paint. There we go. And these are just clips. Look at the old Lucas touch right there. There we go. Good body lines, Audi. This is great. We'll tighten all 16 of these nuts. There are seriously a ton of these, plus the clips. They weren't messing around. So right now everything is loosely fit. Lucas is gonna close the trunk and just make sure everything lines up, because there is a slight adjustment with bumpers. What do you think?
This gap has to be a little bit closer.
Okay, it's little things. Most people wouldn't notice that, but on a car this nice, you wanna get it right. All right, so we're shifting this gap open a little bit before we tighten everything. Oh, it's much better. Oh yeah, look at that. That is fantastic. And this lines up perfectly, so you don't want to mess with the trunk lid if you don't have to, because that is mated to the quarter. There's no real adjustment there. So this is perfect. We got that gap and that gap down, we're in good shape. Oh, this is something important. They use a cavity wax on the inside, anything that was bare metal underneath a panel. And if you guys remember, this is what the trunk looked like before. So it was dented and it was scratched. And now we have this. You can barely tell it was ever damaged. All right, tail lights are going in. So they snap in like that, and just one very, very easy screw on the inside. So everything in the trunk is put back together and we cleaned it out. WeatherTech mat going in too. Fender liners are going in. After we're done, this car is getting a full final detail. After they do any paint work, they do buff out panels, even though honestly, it probably doesn't need to be buffed at all because the Lupe is awesome. Wheel is going on, and these are real BBS wheels. We checked the inside part number as well, so that's really, really cool. They look perfect. The RS4 is on the ground. It is now going to get buffed, and then we have emblems, and then this car is done. All right, guys, this is it. I just pulled up for day 3 over here at the body shop in the C63. Yeah, they got a lot of cool stuff here, guys. I'll show you a little bit of this in a minute. But here is the RS4 after getting buffed out and cleaned, looking sweet. One last thing to do. We got to make this thing a real RS4 again. So Lucas has this all measured out, and before any of this stuff is removed, they take measurements so we get it just right like factory. And it looks good right there. You've done this a few times, it looks like. Yeah. I'm always nervous when you're putting badges on. It's double-sided tape, so you could redo it, but it's strong stuff, and I'm always worried I'm gonna mess it up, but wow. Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Based off measurements, we have the R where it's supposed to be. Next, of course, is the S. And you guys could probably predict what's next. It's the 4. All right. Are we done here?
Yeah, done.
It's done, right?
All done.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem.
The interior's all cleaned up as well. What a cool place to be. This is amazing. Such good condition. Reset the service light. Who loves a manual? Oh, it runs so good, guys. Seriously, it's like a brand new car. Let me show you guys. So here's the Audi RS4. Just a couple of weeks ago, it had sat in my friend's lot for about 3 years. And although it had a few issues like a check engine light and an intermittent rough running condition, it is misfiring. The car overall was still in great shape. After cleaning up the intake valves and bringing all of the maintenance up to date, sorting out anything and everything that this car may need, it was back on the road doing what RS4s should be doing. And now, after all of the amazing work here at O'Hare Auto Body, here she is, our final product for a little mini restoration and update on the 2007 Sprint Blue Pearl Audi RS4. And now I could walk around this car freaking out about how cool it looks at every angle. It seriously, there's no part of this car that looks bad. But instead of that, I'm gonna give you guys a nice montage so you can experience this for yourself. All right, guys, there you have it, and let's bring it back to where it all started. And here it is. Here it is. It was right back there. It's right here. It's got a few issues, and it's been sitting for the better part of 3 years. Oh, man. So in a perfect world, my friend who owns most of these cars would have indoor storage for them, but some of them do have to sit out from time to time. They're in various stages of restoration, and some of you guys had mentioned that the Audi looked pretty darn clean in the reveal video, and you're right, because we had some crazy storms here. I'm literally running into a Jeep, and some of these cars that have clear coat can look clean, even though they've been sitting for a long time. Like this GMC. This has been here longer than the RS4, looks pretty good. Look at this old Caravan, and that's sometimes what, you know, the camera can do. In sunlight, it looks good. This hasn't been washed in probably half a decade. Nice looking Volvo, nice looking Range Rover. Look at this 540i. It doesn't even need a wash, and it's been sitting here for a very, very long time. My point is, a lot of YouTube car thumbnails for cars that have been sitting for a while are doctored up to look much worse than they really are. If a car sits out, you know, in the rain and you catch it on a sunny day, it sometimes can look pretty good. So that car definitely sat here for 3 years, and I simply showed it to you guys exactly how it was. But for a modern car with good clear coat, that's just normal. It can look just like that. There are also no trees here to drop any leaves or sap on the car or needles, and it is mostly a stone parking lot. It's not muddy and very grassy, so that's good too. And that's my little spiel on cars that have been sitting around for a bit. This is something I've always wondered about as well, because you'll look at car listings, a car's been sitting for 20, 30 years, and it looks really good or it looks really bad. It just depends where they store it. And oddly enough, the ones that are stored inside in a garage can sometimes look way worse than the ones that sit outside, because they're not constantly being cleaned by Mother Nature. But anyway, I hope you guys really enjoyed this little mini 2-part series on the Audi RS4. It's been a blast. And unfortunately, I probably won't be seeing too much more of this car because my friend has decided to sell it. I don't know how much. I think he's gonna make a listing for it, but for now, I'll leave his email down below if you guys are interested in the Audi RS4. But with that, if you enjoyed this series, give it a big thumbs up, share the video with your friends and family, subscribe to the channel for more cool stuff like this, and most importantly, have a fantastic day. I'll see all of you in the next video. Although sometimes I feel like I'm working harder. I don't know what I'm saying there, Max. Cut that out. Just the last part. Not the lyrical mastermind, I like that. It's the worst bolt removal ever. And they go like this. And they put pen, and this puts, with the rotor on, we have brand new pads and slide clips, yeah. And then we're gonna do the switchest, and then we're gonna do the quickest fuel filter, and then we're gonna do the, why does this look so bad? It's like 480p. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, never mind, this thing's like totally dead. Yeah, I don't know what I'm thinking right now. Something, blah, 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 blah. All right, Max, this will be a nice montage with some cool music, you know, like da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. So that sounds like a good one. I came stock with a factory gimbal in my arms. Years of filmography. Filmography is what they call the guys that do the videos. The videography, filmography. Shut up, shut up.
Aquí te va la palabra clave de esta
Oh my
hora.
goodness.